Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com.
Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture, the show where we discuss science, technology and culture in its myriad of forms. I'm one of your hosts, Ben Warner, and I'm joined by my good friend, colleague and fellow co-host, Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve?
I'm good, thanks, Ben. Hello, everyone out there in STC land. It's another interesting chat today, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to make sure that this chat gets preserved in prosperity till the end of time. It's interesting in today's world that we're generating so much data just from the fact that the devices have made it so easy to produce data that we have to be able to store it, retrieve it, and then the logical question after that is, will it be usable in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, 100 years' time? These are all questions that are worth pondering at this stage, because I guess this sort of big data era that we're in has really just started. So we don't really have a context for something like this in the past, because all of our previous storage methods and creation methods were analog. So what do you think about that, Steve?
Well, I mean, that's a really good point, Ben. I mean, we've got effectively, paper for years and years and years, and then you move to, I guess you go to a visual formats. So you've got your, film, and then followed by video and photographs at the same time, and then you've got all of that moving to the digital sort of era. And people used to worry about paper. They still do. Will it last? Does it, turn yellow and curl up or whatever? And it seems to be the best and most resolute format because things are changing so rapidly. We're seeing old file types left behind. We've certainly in the last 3 decades seen PCs revolutionised, where we've gone from big beige boxes to mobile devices. And the question is, how can we keep this data relevant and accessible for everyone?
Okay, so there's two sort of different strands to this. We'll start with the data rot idea, which because I think this one's a bit quicker, I think, only in terms of the discussion, and that's actually the literal degradation of the data itself. Now, that might be dependent on the form that it's being stored in, whether that's being a disk or obviously if you've still got a old school spinning hard drive, that's quite likely to fail. And you've had we've both had experience with failed hard drives. So, but I'm just wondering, is it to the same extent to say an analog format would degrade over time?
Well, photos last, as far as we know, over a century. If they're looked after, so does paper. I guess, when you're looking at pure rot, corrupted files on a malfunctioning disk or a system, and the thing is that it can be your hardware at some point corrupts that file, and then that file is gone if it's not backed up somewhere else. So I guess, basically our universe is programmed to see everything go from order to disorder. So I guess, at some stage that rot has to creep into the original files, whether it's, direct. I mean, I imagine the files, if they're untouched or untransmitted, will remain intact. But it's the process of opening and closing those files where the rot occurs, because that's where you get errors.
I guess maybe the cloud might offer a potential sort of solution for that. In theory, if these data centers that these big tech companies are producing, if they've got their multiple redundant backups, then in theory it shouldn't degrade. And if you've got your own personal backups of it as well, and a couple of them, then you're increasing the chances that the data is going to be retained at 100% quality.
Well, that's right. But that's only the data that you store in those formats. If you have any data that sits outside of that, then who knows what will happen longer term. So I guess, maybe we're moving to a system now through cloud storage and I guess just the mobility of access. But I don't know. I mean, as we talk more about this topic, I think that there's a number of things that I guess we're all concerned about.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we now move on to data formats, file formats, etc., this is perhaps, I think it's more crucial in the sense that it's all well and good if the file stays intact, but if you don't have the ability to read it, then there's not much point in it being there. It's just taking up bits on your server or wherever it is you've got it stored. Now, this is really important that you'd hope that. Well, I mean, you'd expect certain big formats, say Office document type formats, with video, maybe the QuickTime from Apple and AVIs from Windows, that you'd think those companies are going to be around for a good long while, and that they're going to maintain that standard, even if it means that if they come up with some better standard, that they write some software that can still read it, the old version of it and whatnot. And you see that to some extent in the sense that Apple, for instance, on OS X kept QuickTime 7 around. They could have just ditched it when QuickTime X came in, or QuickTime 10. So I guess that's an important thing. It's having that ability to read it.
Yeah, well, that's right. I don't think the backward compatibility is a huge issue. It comes back now to the digital rot part of where is that stored. So is it stored in an old hard drive, that's Serial Bus or SCSI, because you've got no hope today of accessing that. Is it on a CD? And you've just bought your brand new MacBook, and there's no optical drive slot. Yep. These are the things that are the real issue. And we're seeing it now across the board. We were talking before about film. So, film has been seen as a long-term storage, asset. It's great because of that. But pretty soon they're going to stop making projectors. Those films are going to have to be stored on digital. And you wonder what the future of that is, or what the accessibility of that is. So that they are all big questions for us. But I guess I don't know if anything other than use of it by people will, make provision for these things. I think a lot of data will be lost.
Yeah. The other side thing too, is that if people are using software that isn't as ubiquitous as, say, Microsoft Office, say Final Cut Pro, these types of big apps from the big companies, there is a chance that whoever's making that software may go out of business, or they may get taken over. It's not continued. What do you do then? Now, I think there was an example that I'd read about recently. It was to do with, I think it was one of Apple's previous productivity suites before they changed over to Intel, and they were using Pages and whatever, and the file formats are not readable anymore. But it turned out that there was and I can't remember which one it was. It was Open Office, or one of those free software bundles that are out there that you can get, was able to read it, and that was a solution in this particular instance. But we might not have that every single time.
No, I mean, that's right. And, we've seen a lot of changes ourselves, with video editing software, and there'd be a whole range of files out there that I know can't be opened anymore. And, it's a really good point. If you've got an old project file, with once you've updated to something else, and if you don't have that anymore, you can't use a Final Cut Pro 7 timeline in Final Cut X. So,
exactly,
they're real issues.
Oh, well, and not to mention the fact that I was just looking back at some of my old backups, because I'm doing a bit of backing up at the moment of important files like the films that we made and things like that. You want to be able to preserve them so that you can access them at any point. The first, I think it would have been the first 7 or 8 films I made were done using Adobe Premiere within Windows using AVIs. Now, they're not as easy to work with under Macs, as you probably know, and but you can get them converted and whatnot. But you want to be able to keep that original one, and I guess as long as you got Windows around, it's okay. But it makes it a bit difficult in making sure that you can preserve that master file. Now, all the films that I made using my Macs, obviously that's okay because they're in QuickTime format. But you have to think about these things going forward, whether it is you do a different version of it. And I've been thinking about doing that as well, just to make sure that there's an easy way to access it.
Well, it's interesting you actually bring up those points, because the other thing as well, video especially, is that every time you reopen a file, work on a file, that file effectively gets corrupted because it's recoded. And, you're losing resolution, you're losing or adding information that wasn't there before. So your file sizes are going up. You're not getting any better picture, but that's what's happening. And that's effectively corrupting your file over time. So these would be big issues certainly in the future.
Absolutely.
Especially for video. But then I guess the argument is whether it's a Word document or a video file now, perhaps we've gone through the digital revolution to a point where these files are understood well enough. I mean, I can't imagine them doing anything more spectacular with Microsoft Word. So therefore, any Microsoft Word file you have today should be good for the next 1,000 years, surely.
Absolutely. But I mean, of all the companies that are good at supporting legacy formats and systems, Microsoft would have to be the one that does that pretty well. Yeah.
And I think that's, you made the point about QuickTime, and I think that's true of video now as well. I mean, video formats for standard and high definition are pretty much settled. And remember, these formats are the packaging around the codecs. So the codecs themselves can change, but as long as it's sitting in a QuickTime bundle, then, you would expect that unless something drastic happens, QuickTime will be around for the next 1,000 years as well.
And do you think there'd be much difference if, there are high resolution sort of images that come into play, like 4K, etc.?
I wonder about that, Ben. I guess we're going to see. But when you think that there's already prosumer 4K out there, they're still being packaged in their video formats, in ways MP4 and QuickTime. So I guess that there might be more data in there. It might be more complex data, but I think as long as the packaging on the outside remains the same, becomes a standard, bit like film did, bit like 35mm film was for so long. That was the standard way of making a proper feature and preserving it. And I think we might see the same now with digital, because we're at that stage where these products have matured.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't stress enough the importance of backing up the data as well. And just as this is well documented on the internet, but you have to have, basically the idiom is, if you've only got one copy, then it's not backed up. So you have to have multiple copies. And because we've got digital formats, it's more important to have those multiple copies, because, lightning strikes or whatever that could occur, you might lose one of them. And if that's your only copy, you're going to, totally lose it all. And I think that's actually a concept that has to sort of permeate the mainstream now too, because not so much for video, but photos in particular, because I think so many people are taking more and more photos now, and there'd probably be a lot of people that are not backing up their photos from their smartphones. And all it would take is, a beer getting spilt on it, or the phone getting dropped off somewhere, and it might be totally gone. And that would be, I guess, tragic, because photos are more than just photos; they're memories.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've got one question for you then, Ben. Agree with you certainly about backups. What about hardware backups? I mean, do you keep old equipment, on the basis that it might be the only way to play a mini DV tape, or, do you keep a CD player around or something like that?
I mean,
drives?
Well, fortunately, the iMac still that I've got from, which is now 7 years old, came with a DVD drive, but it's become temperamental, so it doesn't always read all the time, mainly because it's getting old. The tape formats are interesting. I've still got some old tape decks and the cameras that can play the tapes, but I've over the last year or two, I've been gradually moving all of that information into a digital format that I can store either on a hard drive with one hard drive backup or a couple of hard drive backups. And now I'm looking at some cloud solutions as well to just get that sort of coverage to make sure nothing gets lost.
Yeah, it certainly is. You know, a big question for all of us now is that backing up and actually making the transition though, because really to back up properly, as you're saying, you need multiple options, and the cloud is part of that option.
And although it may lead to some corruption or some degradation or whatever when you compress or change formats or convert to other formats, the fact is digital's malleable that way. So in a sense, that's also very helpful if you're trying to figure out a storage medium. Obviously the films that we made were done on digital tapes. So yes, they're digital, but they're on tape. So that had to be converted going into a computer, and we did that for the editing. But it's important that we have those options available, because just keeping it on, I was just never comfortable keeping them just on the tape.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
All right.
It is good that storage is easy now.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But there's, it is a shame though, just as a final note, that, we don't back onto tape, because that was pretty good.
Oh, who knows? It may make a comeback. Maybe the cloud might, I don't know, have some catastrophe or something, and they look at other options.
Data storage on tape again could be an option. You have your flash drive and USB to tape storage. I mean, basically a lot of businesses still use tape storage for their backup, so I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that'll work, that's what we'll look at. All right, Steve, we might wrap it up there. So thanks again for that discussion. It was quite interesting, and we can probably come back to it because, it's very important because so much of our lives are in this data now.
Absolutely.
All right, so don't forget our website, scitechculture.com. You can get all of our links there and our content. We've got quite a bit there. You can interact with us on Twitter, Google+, and Facebook, so I'd love to hear from you. And if you think what we discuss in these shows is interesting, and you might think that other people might find it interesting, feel free to send them to our website. We'd greatly appreciate that. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.